It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system. For if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning. Henry Ford. Welcome back to the channel. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that money in your pocket has no extrinsic backing. It floats purely on trust and government decree. That morning arrived on August 15, 1971, when President Nixon announced the end of a monetary era built after World War II. Today we'll journey from the halls of Bretton Woods to this pivotal moment, explore how a bold decision reshaped every passing credit, investment, and price tag you interact with. Welcome to the real story of our modern money.
At Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, delegates from 44 allied and associate countries arrived for the opening of the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. Invited by President Roosevelt to the first major world financial meeting since the London Conference of 1933, they will work in the seclusion of this White Mountains resort. Zhang Shi-kung, one of China's representatives, with Secretary and Mrs. Henry Morgenthau. United States Treasury Secretary Morgenthau heads the American delegation. On the opening day, in his role of acting conference president, he addresses the meeting. To be discussed are plans for the stabilization of world currencies. All agreements must be ratified by the governing bodies of the nations involved before becoming effective. Delegates to this monetary and financial conference pose on the hotel lawn. These meetings are designed to promote trade in the post-war world and to create a foundation for lasting peace.
Delegates from 44 allied nations crafted a system of fixed exchange rates. The US dollar was made convertible to gold, and other currencies were pegged to the dollar. The IMF and World Bank were also established. The Bretton Woods system came into full operation by 1958, restoring stability in global exchange rates and ensuring cooperative financial management. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Bretton Woods system was breaking down. The U.S. trade deficits and spending caused domestic inflation, which made the fixed gold rate unrealistic by increased dollars in circulation. The Vietnam War cost in Great Society programs increased U.S. debt, which caused a loss of confidence in the dollar. Foreign governments, notably France, were demanding gold for their dollar holding. The U.S. gold reserves fell sharply as countries exchanged dollars for gold.
Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. Now, what is this action, which is very technical, what does it mean for you? Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar. Now, this action will not win us any friends among the international money traders, but our primary concern is with the American workers and with their competition around the world. To our friends abroad, including the many responsible members of the international banking community who are dedicated to stability and the flow of trade, I give this assurance. The United States has always been and will continue to be a forward-looking and trustworthy trading partner.
Nixon's televised announcement only served its purpose as a temporary measure. He suspended the dollar to gold convertibility and imposed a 90-day wage and price freeze to fight inflation. This resulted in a 10% import surcharge to protect U.S. industries. These events led to global panic and uncertainty. Currency began fluctuating more wildly, which marked the de facto death of Bretton Woods.
The Bank of England stopped buying dollars on the open market today. As a result, the dollar sank to a 4-year low in Britain. In Washington, the 10 biggest non-communist trading countries met at the Smithsonian Institution. They are trying to reach an agreement on just how far the dollar should be devalued officially. The finance ministers met in the Smithsonian Museum Hall. Each delegate bargained for new exchange rates that would most benefit his country in world trade. Treasury Secretary Conley was asked by the others when the United States will devalue the dollar and remove the 10% surcharge on foreign goods. There is a difference of opinion within the Nixon administration on how soon the United States should devalue the dollar and remove the surcharge if this monetary conference agrees on new exchange rates. Secretary Conley wants to have trade concessions on American products firmly in hand first. This will involve separate trade negotiations. Others are recommending to President Nixon that just as soon as new exchange rates are set, the U.S. should devalue and remove the surcharge because further delays might jeopardize world trade. This difference of opinion within the administration is evident to the other negotiators at the monetary conference, and it weakens Conley's bargaining position.
The Smithsonian Agreement of 1971. The U.S. convinced major nations to realign exchange rates. Gold was revalued at $38 an ounce. This allowed currencies to fluctuate within a 2.25% band. The inflation continued, U.S. deficits grew, and the dollar remained under pressure. The Smithsonian Agreement collapsed within 15 months. The Jamaica Accords of 1976. The IMF officially recognized floating exchange rates as legitimate. Gold was demonetized in the IMF system, and no currency was tied to gold anymore. Countries could choose their own exchange rate arrangement. This cemented the fiat currency system, where money value came from government decree and not a tangible asset.
Oil embargoes, OPEC basically tripled the price of oil to the Western world. And at that time, America realized that they were vulnerable because they were importing about 70% of all the oil they consumed.
To secure a reliable foreign source of oil, U.S. President Richard Nixon sent his Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger to Saudi Arabia for a secret meeting. The result was a pact that still stands to this day.
If Saudi Arabia, which at the time was the world's largest producer of oil, would sell the oil in US dollars, America would defend Saudi Arabia and make sure the House Assad would stay in power.
As a direct result of this U.S.-Saudi agreement, all other oil-producing nations also adopted the dollar as the de facto medium of exchange. Demand for it increased exponentially all over the world, and soon it had a new name, the petrodollar.
Your currency is only as strong as the demand for it, just like anything else, the supply and demand. Why the petrodollar is important, it causes a demand for the US dollar. A lot of Americans don't realize that over 70% of all the $100 bills in the world are actually outside of the US. There's more $100 bills in Russia than there are in America.
This stockpile of US dollars in countries around the world is because oil is bought and sold using the greenback.
If oil starts trading in non-petrodollars, such as gold or a basket of currencies, or if China and Russia start trading in yuan and ruble rather than US dollars, that demand isn't there. And the way of life for the average American will be done. It will be worse than the Great Depression.
There are pros and cons to the fiat system. Some pros in the fiat system is that the government can borrow money to respond to crisis. International trade is more flexible for massive GDP growth. The cons are the unlimited money printing potential, which will cause inflation and debt growth. There have been numerous currency crises like Venezuela, Brazil, Argentina, Turkey, and Japan, just to name a few. Asset bubbles are more than likely to occur. The petrodollar deal of the mid-1970s between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia to price oil exclusively in dollars ensured continued global demand for the dollar after gold backing ended. From a gold stamp promise forged at Bretton Woods to a world ruled by fiat, the path has been turbulent but transformative. The Nixon shock ushered in currency flexibility, central bank power, and new risks like inflation and volatility. Yet, it paved the way for global trade, economic policy tools, and even the petrodollar era, ensuring that the U.S. dollar remains king, despite having no gold to back it. So next time you spend a dollar or check on the exchange rate, remember its value is anchored not to gold, but to history, trust, and choices made over 50 years ago. Please comment, like, and subscribe so we can get the truth out to the people that need it. Peace.